again this morning. During April, initial unemployment claims surged from 385,000 for the first week to 474,000 for the last week in April. The last time that initial claims were this high was October of last year. This development is extremely unsettling, as we've been expecting continued improvement in the labor market. While the job growth is welcomed, today's employment report, coming on the heels of these troubling initial claims data, is showing some disconcerting signs. 9% unemployment and a rise in the number of workers who recently lost their jobs are disappointing statistics. We need still faster private sector job creation, or otherwise millions of U.S. workers will languish in unemployment, whether they're counted as such or have dropped out of the labor force, and millions more will remain underemployed or live in fear of losing their jobs. The Economist recently asked the question, what's wrong with America's economy? In answering its question, the Economist pointed to America's public finances and its labor market. Moreover, the Economist stated the recent decline in the unemployment rate is misleading because it's the result of surprisingly small growth in the workforce as discouraged workers drop out. The labor force participation rate remains at the lowest level in more than a quarter century. It's frustrating beyond words to see the excruciatingly slow progress in employment growth, especially while President Obama pursues policies that obstruct economic activity and job creation. The energy manufacturing and services industry in America is a prime example. Under this administration, the energy manufacturing and energy services industry is suffering from the de facto drilling moratorium on vast offshore areas, a molasses-like permitting process, and threats of adverse tax changes that will ship jobs and production overseas. We should be content with poring over these employment numbers month after month and bemoaning the slow progress. Perhaps we can blame it on the weather or China or on American energy, but we know what's causing this growth problem, so let's fix it. Let me show you again, as I did at last month's hearing, the payroll job performance during and after this recession compared with that during and after the other two major post-war recessions. This chart demonstrates how we are underperforming relative to past experience. This is an exceptionally weak recovery. And there is no excuse for the dismal job performance. You cannot explain it by saying the financial crisis caused severe recessions, but then fail to encourage private sector growth by every means possible. Why does the President have an obsession with raising taxes? Why does he persist with his green jobs mantra when the 1% of our energy sector for which wind and solar account clearly cannot revive America's job market? Americans are demanding real solutions. JEC Republicans released one paper in the summer and another in the fall of last year that warned treating the BP Gulf oil spill as simply an environmental disaster would be a mistake. By the time the second paper came out in October, the price of crude oil had just risen above $80 per barrel. These papers explained the importance of continued exploration and development in the fastest growth areas for oil production in the country to help counteract future oil price volatility. In 2010, the United States was the largest source of oil supply growth outside of OPEC on the strength of offshore production. But this year, the Energy Information Administration expects federal Gulf of Mexico oil production to fall by 240,000 barrels each and every day. Energy consulting firm Wood Mackenzie estimates a drop of 375,000 barrels per day in 2011 oil production because new development wells could not be brought online. If those barrels are imported, how does that help stabilize oil prices? How does that help our economy? How does that help our job seekers? The price of oil is now $100 per barrel, while the average price of gasoline nationwide is just shy of $4 per gallon. The private sector is boosting labor productivity. First quarter productivity was up by 1.6%. However, businesses are also sitting on $2 trillion of cash that they won't invest because of regulatory uncertainty and fear of higher taxes and inflation. Therefore, businesses are not creating the jobs necessary to reemploy more people and increase the nation's output sufficiently to generate enough tax revenue to support those who are sick, retired, or remain unemployed. The annual rate of real GDP growth slowed to 1.8% in the first quarter. President Obama has put the Federal Reserve in a position where it feels compelled to hold the federal funds rate at zero and buy hundreds of billions of dollars worth of Treasury bonds. The Joint Economic Committee Republicans just released a paper on that subject as well, titled "Too Loose for Too Long." The Federal Reserve is taking a great risk with inflation that would not be necessary if the other levers of the private economy that the government can impact were set to go. Dr. Hall, I look forward to your testimony.
Thank you. Congressman Cummings.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you for